Okay, so anyways, let's jump on in to the official forums again. I do think it would be worth, though, checking out some other sources. We were talking about the Steam discussion page a couple minutes ago, and while I'm not going to dive into that today, it might be fun to try and see like other places where people are discussing the game, because obviously on the official forums here, there's a handful of people that do most of the posting, and so you get a lot of the same complaints over and over again. It would be fun to see what people are saying in other places like Steam, maybe even Reddit, just different forums of discussion. But for now, we're diving into the official forums. So let's see what we've got here today. Does FF14 hate politics now? Spoilers for Dawntrail 7.1. Now this is something that we've talked about a lot, or at least I have. Let's see what this Chad has got to say on the matter. One of the things that made A Realm Reborn so great was its rich political intrigue. Old Daz Monetarists schemed against the Sultana, Lim Zilimans' pirates chafed under the Admiral's rule, and Gridania was boiling over from tensions with the Duskwhite, Elizin, and Alamegan refugees. These conflicts made the world feel alive, layered, and grounded in real-world issues. Politics were central to the story, driving the narrative and building a complex world. Correct. Fast forward to Dawntrail, and that political tension feels almost entirely absent. Take the Yakhoi, who gave up a vast empire that subjugated much of Tural, including the Pelu Pelu. Well, see, this part's a little disingenuous. The Yakhoi didn't give up the empire. They died to a plague and lost power on a scale that they couldn't maintain their influence. So it's like there was a sickness that killed them, which caused them to weaken and lose their hold over the continent. Like, it wasn't that they just gave it up. There were outside factors that caused that. Well, the story does mention that some people feel uncomfortable around them, and there are a few Yakhoi who want to return to their status as conquerors. There's little exploration of the lasting impact of their conquest. Yeah, it gets mentioned a few times. It's mentioned like pretty much constantly throughout the first half of the story, because the Yakhoi obviously like have a shared history with everybody in that region, so it's kind of hard not to mention it. But yeah, there's not like lasting impacts of it outside of that one tribe that Wuklamat saves from a bird and wins over with the power of friendship. The Pelu Pelu, who were once enslaved by the Yakhoi, now seem to have completely forgotten or don't care about their former subjugation. Well, they're free from it, so I don't know. The thing is, like, the statement, the opening statement of this thread I actually agree with, like, basically just the sentiment that the game story has become a lot less political recently, which I think makes it overall less interesting, because I like the way that they did political intrigue in the earlier expansions. But like, there's a couple things that are like, the way this guy is going about making that point, he's not using the greatest examples, but the Pelu Pelu have been free and happy for like 80 years, so like what should they be doing? Like, they've got a pretty good life now. They don't really need to sit around and think about the horrible conditions they used to live in. Like, I don't know. Things are pretty good for them now. Isn't that in hundreds, if not thousands of years ago? Pelus as slaves, I think, it was Galul Jaja that got rid of that. He's the one that taught them how to trade. I'm pretty sure it was Galul Jaja that got rid of that. You have two sides of hating Dawntrail: grifters that hate it for getting too woke and political, i.e. Wuklamat, and then people that hate it for not being too political, i.e. Wuklamat. Well, no, there are people that like to grift and, say, oh, game's woke now. Like, first of all, it always has been. Like, that's not new. But, like, really, like, what it stems from is the Dawntrail story was just not that good. And so a lot of people have a negative sentiment toward that, which fuels those type of negative grifts, where it's like, if people already don't like it, they just want to look for additional reasons to not like it, basically. But yeah, this has actually, like, the lack of politics has been a complaint of mine since Shadowbringers. So, like, this isn't even a Dawntrail problem for me, but, like, it is definitely more pronounced in Dawntrail because it is an expansion that deals with things that should inherently be very political, the rights of succession, choosing a new leader for an entire continent, and it kind of neglects a lot of the politics of that process. I don't understand the woke game argument either. Like, people just like to latch onto buzzwords. It's just an easy thing to, put another ding in the armor. All right, let's see. Or consider Shalawani, a region inspired by the American West. The discovery of ceruleum deposits has led to the construction of railroads and other industrial projects, which in our real history was a disaster for the native people. Yet the local Hetsaro people magically coexist with the industrialists drilling into their land. There's no exploration of displacement, cultural erasure, or conflict over resources. Instead, the two groups live side by side in harmony, a magical train horn solving all problems. Yeah, this is actually a good point, because if you do the Blue Mage quests, industrialization is a big problem for the people living in that region. Like I don't remember the name of the Blue Mage tribe. It'll come back to me if I think about it long enough. But, like, they live in Cerulean Valley, or, like, the Blue Valley or whatever, which is blue because of ceruleum. And there's expansionists that are trying to drill the ceruleum so that they can use it, for profit, basically. And so it's encroaching upon the native people's territory. That's, like, the center of the plot of the Blue Mage story, at least in, like, the Stormblood rank quests. It's pretty important, but then when we get to Dawntrail, they don't really deal with that at all. They don't even address it, whereas it seems like it should be pretty important. I don't see FF14 as overly woke. We'll see. Again, it depends on what you consider woke, which, again, today, it's a buzzword. It means whatever you want it to mean. But it really depends on who you ask. But usually, defining woke would be like, it's very progressive. Generally, like, it tends to lend itself to progressivism. That's the easiest way to describe it. It's going to be somewhere adjacent to that. But, FF14 has always been not always. Well, I'm trying to think of how to word this without sounding like an idiot, but it's because I don't want to hyperbolize either. It's really not that extreme in either direction, but there's always been like a general progressivism of it. Square Enix obviously endorses all this stuff, and that's fine, right? You could play whatever character and whatever outfit you want. They allow you to marry whoever you want in game and whatnot. So it's like they've never really been restrictive on that type of stuff, and like some people would consider that woke. But again, it's a buzzword. It has like no bearing on the actual quality of the game. It's nonsense. Let's see. These are just a few examples of a trend in Dawntrail. Political conflict is either absent or mentioned only as a token, with no real exploration of its consequences. Clearly the writers wanted a lighter tone after the heavy stakes of Endwalker, but it comes at the cost of the moral complexity and political realities that made the previous places feel alive. I hope the future patches or expansions will bring political intrigue back. FF14's world feels most alive when it grapples with the messy, conflicting interests of its inhabitants. Am I off base? Do you miss the politics of earlier expansions? So yeah, like obviously like we're dealing with different nations and how they interact with each other, so there are politics innately in Dawntrail, it's just they don't really explore them. And so this is a place where I think they missed an opportunity, because the post-story, I wish, dealt more with uniting Tural again. Because Tural as a region is like, it's all united under one banner, beholden to Tulialal, but now that they've got this whole succession matter, you have different factions supporting different candidates, and you even run into a few of them early on in the story, like the Pelu Pelu that we brought up as an example last time. There were certain Pelu Pelu that were hoping Zoral Ja would win because they knew they could profit off of the conflict that he would perpetuate. And there were a few other examples of that, where it's like, you had different peoples hoping that different candidates would win the right of succession because it would further their interests. But after the rights are over, all of that just goes away. It never gets mentioned again. And so, there should be other factions that were hoping that this or that candidate would win. And how do you unite them all under one banner now when they have different opinions of how the entire nation should be run? They don't really mention it. It doesn't really get delved into. And I think it could have been really interesting for the story. They did this in Heavensward, for example, where as we're kind of deconstructing the theocracy in Ishgard and instating basically a republic, you had splinter factions that were not in favor of that. They tried to assassinate Americ. There's all kinds of things going on. And then you had, members of the high houses not really knowing how to deal with it and like just making things worse. You had a Manolin ordering a protester to get shot with an arrow. Like there was all kinds of wacky stuff. There's people that didn't want to trust the dragons. There's people that did. They delved into a lot of that at a level that, Dawntrail kind of just glazes over most of that stuff. And it's not too late to address some of that narratively, but it feels like it's been pushed so far into the background that it's probably not going to come back up. Did enjoy the meeting in Stormblood between all the leaders and Varys. Yeah, I wish that Varys was written a little better there, because I feel like his position doesn't make a lot of sense. I think he was wasted as a character. But yeah, we don't really get scenes like that. That was the last time we had a scene like that, where major, factions fighting against each other sat down and just talked about politics. Closest we could get is maybe, I don't know. There was a little back and forth between Vothri and the Exarch and Shadowbringers, but even that was largely not political. It was because Vothri was allied with the Sin Eaters and the Exarch was allied with everybody else trying to fight against the Sin Eaters. And so once we started killing them, Vothri obviously didn't like that. But it wasn't like a really deep conflict. It was pretty surface level. And then there's they tried to do something interesting with the Garleans after Endwalker. They really tried to do something interesting there, but mostly it was for the sake of padding, and so it just didn't work out. We had the situation where it's like, we've liberated Garlemald from its horrible, corrupt Ascian leadership and prevented their entire country from being brainwashed and destroyed, but now they want us gone, even though our aid is the only thing that's actually keeping them alive. And so you had that splinter faction of the remnants of the Garlean. It's like some kind of council or something. It's just like the most high up people still in charge of anything that didn't want to accept our help and were refusing to allow us to use their tower to teleport Aether to the moon, even though we used it in the role quest and nobody cared. And but it's like they added in that section where there was like a faction of Garlias that didn't want to accept the aid and like wanted us to leave or whatever, but it was done as padding, and so it didn't really go that deep, and they were very easily swayed. And played Dawntrails or anything happening with Garlemald. Not in Dawntrail, no. It gets mentioned once or twice, but you never like interact with it. Gamers, when they realize, woke up every day. God, I don't want to dive into the mud and deal with the woke issue, but like basically when people talk about games being woke as a negative thing, usually what they're referring to is modern progressive politics being shoved into settings where they don't fit. And some people will take that too far in how they use it as a derogatory buzzword or whatever, or like oftentimes you get people misapplying it in places in stupid ways. But like it's one of those things where like I kind of understand it, but there's a lot of idiots that poison the well. It's a conversation that's difficult to even have because it's just controversy and buzzwords and nonsense, or at the detriment to gameplay narrative. Yeah, exactly. Like there are cases where like shoving any form of modern politics, whether it's progressive or conservative, doesn't really matter, but like shoving it into like settings where it doesn't fit is annoying. Where it's like, if people want escapism, they don't want to be reminded of current world issues that they're trying to escape from. And so like I think it's just, you end up with people that go too far with it, where it's like, it's perfectly reasonable to say that you don't want modern, especially American politics, being shoved into every piece of media ever. That's a reasonable thing to say. It's okay to say that you don't want modern politics in your medieval fantasy thing. That's fine. But then you got people that overcorrect, and now all of a sudden they don't like, anything that's different from like, the refusal to open the mind at all, right? People kind of take it too far, where it's like they get so vehemently against this thing to where all of a sudden we're just being like blatantly racist, right? That's the thing. It's like there's balance to everything. Is there a link for this? Oh, we're just on the forums, the FF14 official forums. Not all politics is American politics, though. Oh, of course not. It's just that, America is where a lot of like media culture, especially like movies and video games, tend to stem from, and so that's the stuff that you see represented the most. The black character in a video game? Woke. Yeah, exactly. Like there's people that take it way too far. People are saying Monster Hunter is woke because the blacksmith has a Skrillex-style haircut. So, that's obviously very silly. But again, it's like I always say, the issue is that people get rewarded for making outrageous statements, not necessarily ones that are reasonable or true. Where it's like, if you say something that generates a lot of buzz, whether positive or negative, if you get people arguing about something, that creates a conversation, which just feeds the algorithms of the internet. So like anything that people are yelling a lot about is going to get pushed by just the mechanisms of the internet. And so we end up almost unable to have honest intellectual conversations because everything has to be hyperbolic in order to generate more attention to it. And so, it's a little silly. So that's the thing. It's like, if someone says, oh, Monster Hunter's woke because someone has a haircut, most reasonable people would look at that and say, that's really stupid, and then just move on with their day. Like, pay it no mind. It's so dumb, it's not worth interacting with. But then it catches people where it's like, they're so prepared to go to bat because of basically the culture war, where it's like, the woke versus the anti-woke, and the progs and the cons and whatnot, like everybody fighting against each other, to where they're like, oh my gosh, now they're being so stupid that they think the game is woke because of a haircut, and then now we're talking about it here. And so you see, like, it generates buzz, which pushes it further, and then more people keep talking about it. It's exactly that. Like, hyperbolizing things is rewarded by the current structure of the internet. And so that's why it keeps happening. That's why these things get so silly. What the heck were we talking about? Politics and Dawntrail. She needs to put on an apron. You're pelting yourself with hundreds of sparks, and it's upsetting me viscerally. No, we already established this. Gemma is hotter than the fire, so when the fire touches her, it burns. Somebody obviously wasn't here for the Monster Hunter stream. Oh god, all these conversations are like a million paragraphs. Can't we just tweet about it? 140 characters or less? Holy crap, enthusiasm diminished during later Shadowbringers patches. Yeah, same. Yeah, they really watered down a lot of the political stuff in this game. And I think it's just Ishikawa doesn't like writing it, to be completely honest. That's my speculation, because if you look at the stories that she deals with the most in this game, all the stuff that she's written, usually it's not that political. Usually it's like the really fantastical stuff. And so ever since she's been put in charge, there's been less and less politics. And I think it's just like, that's just not stuff that she likes to write about. I wish that they would get a really good political writer, at least on the team again. Not even necessarily in charge, but at least on the team. That's one thing that Matsuno did really well, was politics. Even though his writing is way too verbose, and he writes way too long and his stuff needs to be edited, he's really good at dealing with the nuance of the politics. I like that stuff. If you look at the actual details of the Bosnia field notes and everything that was going on there, it's all very complex and difficult. It's hard to tell who's necessarily right or wrong in some of those cases, where it's like you had a lot of the enemies in that, a lot of the Garleans in that were actually good people. And then some of the Bosnians were bad people. It was more complex. I like that stuff. But yeah, it's just, we don't really have a lot of writing like that anymore. I think there's just nobody on the team that really does politics that well. Oh yeah, let's see. Our heroes might be all loving do-gooders. They can't hand-wave the history overnight. Merwib must break a treaty because she lives in an imperfect world where that simply is the least bad option available to her. Nanamo cries in despair that though she is a princess, she cannot magically fix her country. The Syndicate and monetarists remain in power. Slavery and the Blood Sands and the hired private armies like the Brass Blades continue to remain a thing. Alamigo and Doma regain their sovereignty, but still remain ruined, and most of their able-bodied men are dead, crippled, or returned home with guilty consciences. But their women having been used for comfort or having grown old and lost their beauty and so on. There is heroism in this setting, but what is done cannot be undone. There's no pristine ideal world to be seen here. What's this part about growing old and lost their beauty? What? That feels unrelated, but when people get older, what? But yeah, no, the rest of this guy's points are like, yeah, basically the way the regions were written in the past seemed like it was more complex, and they delved into a lot of that nuance more often. I guess the world can't feel real if it isn't a total crap sack. Well, not necessarily that. It's just that, in a realistic setting, like, things aren't happy joy all the time. There's, like, difficult conflicts, and especially there are conflicts where there's not really a right or wrong. It's just people with opposing ideas, and so diving into that is realistic. It's normal that people are constantly at odds with each other ideologically, and that's going to cause some problems. And sometimes you have to work with people you don't necessarily like. Sometimes you have to help people you don't necessarily like. And, sometimes the good guys do lose. And that's the type of stuff, though, that used to happen more often in the game. And, like, the writing lately has been a little bit happier and more optimistic on a level that almost feels like it makes it harder to suspend disbelief. Let me put some tea water on. I'll read that. So far I like what this guy's saying. I want to see what else he's got. But yeah, let me put it like this. Like, the writing used to deal a lot with, like, difficult political situations. So it was like ideological divides, where Realm Reborn, for example, shows you all the horrible ways that everybody lives in Eorzea, but at the end of the day, they all need to work together or they're going to get destroyed and end up with something even worse. Heavensward deals with, a theocracy where everybody's basically indoctrinated into a cult that tells them this is the only way, but secretly they're hiding the truth from them. People don't actually know how things used to be. They don't know their own history. And turns out that all of the high houses are not so high after all. They're just ordinary people who happen to descend from those who started the lie. So, like, that deals with a really interesting political situation. Stormblood shows you how complex it is to decolonize a place that has, for years, been under the tyranny of an expansionist empire that's enslaving and manipulating the people that live there. There's all that type of stuff, whereas, from Shadowbringers onward, it starts to deal with more personal issues. Shadowbringers is about grief, it's about loss and moving on. Endwalker is about never giving up hope and, finding hope no matter how dark things get. Dawntrail is about being able to live with memories of the past and not like it's about moving on with, like, memory, trying to think of exactly how to put the narrative into a quick summary, but it deals heavily with the concept of memory, of legacy, and how people engage with memories and not being beholden to the past, being able to move on. The past 3 expansions all deal with deeply personal themes, whereas prior to that, they dealt with more, like, broad political themes. But let's see what the rest of this guy's got to say. Starting in the Shadowbringers patches, the writers embark on a hand-waving away all the unpleasantness in the setting at the expense of 14's realism and feeling of weight. All the pirate crews now magically obey Merlwyb when they weren't doing so before, and now there's peace with the Sahagin and the Kobolds. Okay, so this is actually not entirely accurate. The pirate crews were obeying Merlwyb. That's how Limsa Lominsa was founded. It's just you had the bloody executioners that were trying to rebel, and Merlwyb whipped them back into line, basically. She forcibly got them back in line with a duel to the death with pistols. And so it wasn't just like they magically agreed, like they were pushed to do it. They had a renegade co-captain, basically. It was the second in command because their lead captain was too sick to run things, and he was trying to push them back toward the old ways because he preferred it. But yeah, the tension with the pirates was kind of always a thing. I don't feel like what they did with the pirates in post Shadowbringers was out of line with what was pre-established, though. Like, I feel like that was pretty much on base, because the pirates that didn't agree with Merlwyb all went renegade. That's where you ended up with God, they deal with this a lot in the job quests, but I can't remember the names of any of them, but most of them are the ones that ended up getting manipulated by Ascians and turned into fishmen. So it's like, to say that it was hand-waved is not accurate. Peace with the Sahagin and the kobolds. Really don't remember how Sahagin got wrapped up into the deal, but with the kobolds, basically they were working to repair relations by kind of fixing the treaty that they had broken. The kobolds happened a lot on screen. I don't remember how the Sahagin got resolved, honestly. No more shortage of land or resources. The prior bloodshed has evaporated. There's still a shortage of land. It's just that they're dealing with it better. And the shortage of resources stopped being as much of a problem because they've opened up trade with most of the world. The resource issue kind of goes away. The enmity between Gridania and the Ixal and the Tempered Sylphs, and between Ul'dah and the Amalja evaporates overnight. Garlemald, yeah, I will say the Amalja thing is one where, like, I don't know how they did not do anything to justify that. They really glossed over the Amalja issue. It was just, they helped us fight against the Talaferoi because we had a shared interest there, and then we pretended afterward that the Amalja weren't kidnapping, enslaving, and tempering people. That one kind of, like, they didn't really do a good job of, like, reconciling the Amalja. And then there was that weird thing with the variant dungeon, the Sildis Subterrane, where they reveal, actually, in the past, Ul'dah was friendly with the Amalja, and they worked together in an alliance. And I'm like, I didn't really like that too much, but actually they did slavery together. I mean, to be fair, I mean, Ul'dah has all kinds of, like, Ul'dah is a horrible place, really. It's the worst out of the main city-states, just in terms of the way that it runs and the way that it's managed and the things that go on there. So it's like, they probably would get along well. Like, you know, if they could profit off of being friends with the Amalja, they would do it, I think. But to make it seem like it was sunshine and rainbows is such a weird angle to take. Let's see, Garlemald's destroyed off screen. Yeah, I hate that. That was still, to this day, that will always be my biggest complaint with Endwalkers, that they wasted the ending of the Garlemald conflict. We should have had some kind of proper finale there. Such a missed opportunity, and you can't go back, you know, or maybe you can, you know. Hey, we've time traveled multiple times in this story. Can we go back in time? I think I said this a few weeks ago, but can we go back in time and witness the fall of Garlemald on screen? Just, there's something there that we need. There's something there that we need. We have to close the time loop and make sure that Xenos kills the Emperor. Imagine, see, that would be a fun expansion. That's like something is threatening the timeline. We need to go get something that can only be obtained from Garlemald. We got to go back and find the last vial of Black Rose, and in order to do so, we have to help Xenos kill the Emperor. It'll be so stupid, it might be awesome. Let me get my tea. If Marasidia isn't 8.0, I think it'll be gone. I feel like Marasidia probably will be in 8.0. I don't know if the whole expansion will take place there, though. My money's on 8.0 going to another shard, but we might stop at Marasidia on the way there. I don't want Rift Travel. I don't either, but I think we're going to get it. It seems obvious that they're trending toward that. Let's see. Garlemald's destroyed off screen, and then we, who killed hundreds or maybe thousands of their fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons, waltz in and pass out bowls of soup, and now everyone's sociable with only a few disgruntled people, let alone anyone. Well, most of the disgruntled ones died, so the people that survived were the ones that were amenable. The rest of them died. So, like, you know, at the end of the day, that's the same thing that happened in Alamigo. You know, Garlemald waltzed in and killed everybody, and the ones that lived there peacefully were the ones that were peaceful. So that's actually not off base, like, let alone anyone trying to assassinate the enemy's great hero and the scourge of Garlemald. No, they tried. Remember, we gave them Cerulean? We gave Cerulean to the First Legion, and then they turned around and tried to kill us with it. No, that did happen. What is this guy talking about? The great foreign adversary that binded the Eorzea alliance together is gone, but everyone's still acting like a happy globalist alliance rather than focused on what is in the best interests of their own country, which would conflict with one another and mean the breakdown of the Eorzean alliance and so on. No. Why would the best interest of each city-state in Eorzea conflict with the interest of each other? Like, Ul'dah, by being amenable with the other states, will have better trade opportunities, and that's basically all they care about. Gridania just wants to protect its forest. which they still have jurisdiction over, so like that wouldn't be affected. And Limsa is also just like they're a seafaring trade nation, so like having more allies gives them more influence. They wouldn't lose anything there. At a point, the Eorzean Alliance no longer has a common enemy. I mean, this is true, but they don't necessarily need one. Yeah, like everything's going pretty well right now. They don't really need a common enemy at the moment. Globalist is an anti-Semitic dog whistle. We don't need to go that far here. He's literally just using a word to describe a situation where you have a planet that's mostly allied with, like, that actually applies to what he's talking about. I don't think it's a dog whistle for anything. Like, we don't need to read that deep into things. It's really not that serious. We're talking about a video game. Let's see. You go to the Void and all the problems get hand-waved overnight. You go to Taral, and a newly established empire, barely 80 years old, features lots of different tribes and races spread out across 2 continents with their own needs and own prior bloodsheds, and said empire is not in peril of collapse. Uklamat is an unpopular claimant, and yet she gets crowned, and the masses who cheer for the 2 popular claimants are nowhere to be seen, not even expressing disgruntlement. Yeah, this is what I said earlier. See, everyone now magically accepts and roots for Uklamat. The first week of Uklamat's rule is tarnished by an invasion and attack on the capital, with the souls of people being utterly destroyed, and Taral requiring the benevolence of a foreign dragon unit to repel the invasion. This would not inspire confidence in Uklamat's rule, and yet no dissent is to be seen. I also complained about this, yeah. Because again, that would have been the perfect moment to have people doubting, like, what's going on. Like, oh no, maybe this thing didn't go that well. Maybe we elected the wrong one. I wish we had the guy that was good at fighting wars now that we're, under attack, even though they wouldn't know at the time that he was the one attacking them. But, that should have been such an interesting moment, though, because, yeah, this would be where you'd start to question if you had chosen the right ruler when somebody gets elected and things immediately go wrong. But they didn't really delve into that. It should have sown more discord. It should have had more implications. Even 7.1 would have been a good time to address that, because even though everything worked out in the end, it still had to get bad before it got good. So it's like you would think at some point that this would come up, but yeah, it just kind of gets brushed aside. But Kona sure did save the Hetzo. Difficult to care when the world does not feel like a real place. The things that are happening do not seem plausible, and there's no tension, no suspense that we may or may not succeed, and the world may or may not wind up better or worse off. Yeah, I think this guy is like, he's off base on a few things, but I think I do agree with the overarching point, which is that, yeah, the politics have been toned down heavily in the game, and there's places where they are sorely lacking or sorely missed. And yeah, Dawntrail, though, was certainly, like, we could probably read this thread for hours because there's a lot to read, but Dawntrail is one of the more egregious examples because inherently the conflict of the expansion is very political by nature, but it doesn't really address the actual surface level politics of it. And so we don't really get to see what the fallout from everything happening in the MSQ was. It's very, very glossed over. And we're starting to see a little bit of Alexandrian politics with 7.1. It should be interesting to find out where that goes. But Alexandria is another case where I feel like they really under-delivered on explaining the lore of it, because there's so many, things about Alexandrian culture that to me just don't make sense. And that's the type of stuff that would be good to explain and have on screen so that, the logic could be understood by the player. There's a lot of things about the way Alexandria runs that to me just, I feel, don't add up. I feel like I should have a better understanding of Alexandria than I do, considering they spent half the MSQ on it. But there's just a base level logic that I feel is missing in some of that stuff, and I wish that they had gone deeper into it. What is Alexandria? Solution 9. How much of this is a cultural thing? Seems that in aspects of Japanese storytellers, people are more prone to forgive and work together to seemingly unrealistic levels more often than not. I don't think it's a cultural thing. 'Cause again, we've had alliances being forged ever since Realm Reborn. That's not new as a concept. People working together and overcoming hardship. That's been in the game forever. It's just that, again, the political aspects of it have been swept by the wayside. We're talking about an observable trend away from politics in the storytelling. So it's not a matter of culture. It's the game used to be written in a way that dealt a lot more heavily with political nuance, and now it's written in a way that it really just kind of avoids that stuff. But anyway, like I said, we could go on for hours with this topic because it's something that I feel very strongly about, and we've talked about it a lot. But Luke would absolutely be right to fight this fiend we see in 7.1. It's baffling we let her walk around. Well, if the people love their queen, and she returned from the supposed dead, and then you, the queen of the enemy nation, showed up and just hit her with a brick and killed her, that wouldn't ease relations very well. Like that wouldn't be an ideal scenario to put ourselves in. It would not make it easier to settle things with Solution 9. That would probably cause more problems. So like Wuklamot's solution of we need to figure out what's going on, yeah, that part is good. Like, she's correct. We do need to figure out what's going on before we act hastily. It is annoying that they split the patch by saying, hey, here's Sphene. She's right over there. We could go ask her what's going on, and then we just kind of walk away. Are they cool with us being there in the first place? We don't know if I don't think they necessarily know that we did it. We probably didn't go around announcing that. From the perspective of the people of Solution 9, they would have seen Zoral Ja as a tyrant take over their civilization and then try to start a war with Tulialal. They would have seen him turn on their people and call all the robots to kill everybody and harvest their souls. And then they would have found out that not only was he stopped by Wuklamot, but then Sphene died somehow in the conflict. Like, they wouldn't necessarily know the details of it. They might not know that we did it. But again, they don't really say. It's not addressed. I don't know how much they know. Oh, here's a good one. Current state of Viera and Hrothgar. It's our weekly check-in. Do they have hats yet? No, they don't even got hairstyles. Okay, still no hats. Here's an interesting one. FRU has been cleared without tanks. You guys know FRU, FRU, Futures Rewritten Ultimate, the latest Ultimate. It's alleged to be one of the easier Ultimates. I think like the only thing easier than FRU is pretty much Uwu, right? Ultima Weapon. Seen on Reddit. Before the healer strike, tank strike crowd run that joke into the ground. The execution required to make this work was outstanding. Congratulations to the team that pulled it off. This is something that actually like I talked about back before Dawntrail even released. Not specifically the ultimate being cleared, but when the healer strike was a big conversation, people were talking about how during the media tour, there were some gamers that cleared the dungeon without a healer, which was just further fuel on the fire that, oh, healers aren't really necessary. And, part of that, as I always say, is that tanks are too powerful. Tanks have too much healing. And so here is, kind of a counterpoint, which is, oh, now you could do it without even having tanks. But like, I've said the same thing even before Dawntrail came out, which was you could also run the dungeon without a tank. You could also run the dungeon without DPS. It's just part of it is, again, like job balancing is kind of wacky. But obviously, yeah, like the average player is not going to go and do that. Same way, average player is not going to run the dungeon without a healer. They also will not be clearing an ultimate without tanks because the average player doesn't clear ultimates at all. Required good RNG, excellent planning, and some cheesing the tank busters in phase 1. I don't think you could cheese tank busters though. Like that would be like saying invulning is cheesing a tank buster. You can explain, like, what makes it cheese and not just a viable strat? They ran into the wall during the cast bar. It canceled it. Something about the tank buster just not happening if you wall it. It just goes away instead of retargeting. What would happen if you just ate it and died? Because, like, if you're walling, you're dying either way. So, like, why would you not just take the hit and die? It kills 2 then? So I suppose that would be considered, I guess that is technically an exploit if it's not operating the way it's intended to. Interesting. I wonder if they'll patch that, unless it's one of those weird netcode things that they probably can't patch. Game has tanks, thought every job was a DPS, could have fooled me, lol. Every job basically is a DPS. I wonder if we'll ever see a world where they get rid of the role distinctions in this game and just make every job the same thing. Sounds crazy, but it's not as crazy as it might sound. I don't think they will. Just because, like, you'd have to dramatically rework, like, healing kits. But, like, if you look at, say, front lines, or just PvP in general, that's basically what they did. They took away interdependence on different roles. And so it's like, the tanks in PvP are more defensive than DPS. The healers in PvP have more healing than DPS, but you don't need any of them. You could just play everything self-sufficiently. And so I wonder if that's the type of game design that could ever be viable. Although I think with this game, they would never be able to make it work just because the entire game up to this point for 10 years has been programmed around the role distinctions, and so all the boss mechanics are made to, there's like stacks that target healers and things that target tanks and stuff like that, so it's like they would have to basically rebuild every single fight. So it'd probably never happen, but it could be interesting, because yeah, as it stands though, they definitely need to rebalance the role breakdown. Like I always say, I think tanks have too much healing. That's the most egregious thing is just, yeah, tanks have too much healing. And healers perhaps have too much mitt. Perhaps. I say as a scholar that loves mitting through mechanics and just over shielding and just skipping mechanics by having way too many shields. But yeah, I don't know. I do think they need to do some kind of rebalancing between the roles. Because yeah, as it stands, it's too easy to solo anything on tank. It's not nearly as easy to solo on any other job. It's like if you want to solo on healer, you can usually heal tank through a lot. But your damage is so low, it's going to take you forever. And the amount of time that you'll spend doing the healing in order to heal tank is going to like slow down your damage even more because you have to cast heals instead of doing damage. Whereas, you know, all the tank heals are pretty much just woven into their base kit to where it never interrupts their damage output. And, you know, melees, or not melees, but DPS. If you want to solo things on DPS, you don't have the sustain most of the time. Can't say I'm surprised. The game is nothing but Dance Dance Revolution with button bloat currently. Execute mechanics perfectly, and you could bypass the entire concept of class identity. This is obviously like a little bit exaggerated, but there is kind of some truth to that. It's like I always say on the healer discussion, right? Which is if you do the mechanics correctly, you need a lot less healing. So this is why people say healing is boring, because if everybody knows what they're doing and actually like correctly solves every mechanic, there's not that much damage to actually heal, and the amount of damage you do need to heal is going to be in line with what you have available as your regular cooldowns. There's not really random damage, there's not extra damage, bosses don't crit anymore. There's just, yeah, there's not as much randomization anymore. What is wrong with do the mechanics and you win? That's basically rating in a nutshell. Depends on if you consider it wrong or not, but from my perspective, personally, I think that it becomes more boring because of the way the mechanics are very rigidly programmed. And so you end up with a limited amount of variations on each mechanic, which means that each fight is going to be very predictable. So yeah, do the mechanics and you win, obviously, is how it should be. But at the same time, there's just not a lot of variation to the way the mechanics run. Everything's cut to a timeline. Everything happens at the same time in the fight in the same order, and it becomes predictable and it becomes boring fast. My main gripe is the only new thing healer gets now is more healing when healers already have way too much healing. Well, the problem is the healers don't have too much healing, they just don't have enough damage to heal. And so we keep getting expanded heal kits, but we don't really get more damage to use it on. That's like when I was doing the raid tier, you know, I was struggling in any fight to ever find a use for Seraphism, because it's a panic button, but you don't really have panic scenarios in most runs of a fight, because usually in a time where you need so much healing, but if there's a moment where you need the amount of healing that Seraphism allows Scholar to output, you're probably going to wipe anyway. It's probably going to mean that you're not clearing if something goes that wrong. And that's kind of one of those problems where it's like most of the times in a fight where that amount of damage is coming out means you're already going to wipe anyway, because that's where you get like a lot of the body check mechanics. You know, that was the problem that Anabasios had, right? Because when something goes wrong in Anabasios, the party just wipes. You can't out heal it and recover. Abyssos had a little bit of that as well with like, you know, P8S especially. If something goes wrong, everybody takes 9 million damage and you guaranteed die. And like that's the type of stuff that feels underwhelming, where it's like, what if you could fail the mechanic but still recover somehow? You know, they tend to iron that out. They tend to hammer that out and get rid of those recovery scenarios, because then you end up with the opposite thing where people get too good at basically cheating around mechanics, and that's how you have people taking tank busters and not wiping the party on it and finding ways to, you know, meme around with it. Whereas this wouldn't be possible in like P12S, right? You mess up caloric and everybody gets hit with 9 million damage. Healers should have more support options instead of heal options, but that would eat too much into the range DPS role. I don't know. I feel like range DPS could use a rework anyway. Now Square will move themselves to fix the fight. For them, a healerless run is acceptable, a tankless is not. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think though, if the tank buster can be like kind of avoided by sacrificing one person instead of the intended two, then that probably is an issue that they need to do something about, because that's obviously unintended. But yeah, honestly though, like I don't think other than like they should fix the tank buster. If you could skip the tank buster by like having someone die, then again, that's obviously not intended. That's probably like some kind of glitch or oversight. It's an exploit, right? That should get fixed. But having challenge runs like this isn't really a bad thing, because it's not like 99.9% of players are ever going to be able to execute this. This is obviously something that a few dedicated people put a ton of time into. And so challenge runs like this are fine. If it's possible, then it's okay for it to be possible, as long as it's extremely difficult and not in any way standard. So yeah, I don't really see a major fix being needed here other than like patching whatever's wrong with the tank buster thing. But that said, I do think that some role rebalancing is kind of needed in this game, and I'm hoping that we actually will get that in 8.0, but man, I don't know. Well, let's see. The slow decline of FF14, a summary. Oh god, yeah, so this is just a thread talking about the Lucy Pyre video. I didn't watch the video. It's like 39 minutes long. I thought with the title of this being a summary, there would be a summary of it. I don't want to watch a 39-minute video about it. But not as like a react anyway. I could see myself putting it on a second monitor. But let's see. Maybe people will kind of address a summary here. Just don't care about her point of view. She rarely plays anyway. I don't know how much she played back when she was more into the game. But yeah, she did kind of jump into it at a time where it was blowing up, and then kind of left quickly thereafter. So like, I don't really know her level of investment in the game. I don't know what her experience with the game is. I know that she's done raids, and as far as I'm aware, ultimates. It seems like she did a lot of raiding, just based on like videos of hers that I have seen. But yeah, mostly I find that I usually disagree with her perspective on healer, and that's about it. That's all I really know. Like, I agree that a healer could be made more interesting than it is, but I disagree on her solutions to it, like her method for doing it, but that's about it. Like, other than that, I've seen, like, she used to like make a lot of memes where it's like, top 10 glams for cat boys, or, what your FF14 race says about you, like what your job says about that type of thing. She used to do like, list type stuff, and then in between that, complain about healing being too boring. I think she played as far back as Stormblood at least. Yeah, I know she like played a decent amount to even be able to make the observations that some of her other videos have. But yeah, I haven't seen this video yet. But let's just see what people are saying about it. Maybe I'll watch it. I love how vindicated I am. Vindicated in what way? This guy's like, oh, hey, someone agrees with me. Like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Like, it's not like this is the first person to say that the game has problems. There's so many videos on this, especially right now. All right, let's see. Here we go. This might be like a summary. See, it's not so much a decline, but rather a change. They made the game more intuitive to new and returning players. This has pros and cons. It's not so much a decline, but rather a change. This one's tough because we know that the player numbers are declining, and it's not just it's not just the patch cycle that's making them decline. So like, there is that, right? But then when you factor in like basically COVID and World of Warcraft, that kind of attributes some of the decline. Like, at this point, we don't really know how much of the decline is because of the game itself and how much it's because external factors, but it is safe to say that there is a growing negative sentiment around the game that would imply that there is definitely a decline happening. So like, yeah, like, it's a change, and the change is why there's a decline. Change what? Change? Lol. Well, I mean, there was a pretty dramatic shift from Stormblood into Shadowbringers, and then there's actually quite a bit that's changed since Shadowbringers. It's been moving in the same direction, like it hasn't changed course since Shadowbringers, but there have been changes since then. I bring this up every time. Sacred Soil used to be 10 yalms. Used to be nothing. Energy Drain used to give you your MP back, and Aetherflow didn't. These are just scholar abilities. Like, there's like, if we played the game as it was in Shadowbringers, like, things would still be pretty similar, but there's a lot of jobs that are unrecognizable from how they used to be. But let's see, what's this guy got to say? He's perhaps more optimistic than I am, although I am generally optimistic. I think the game will improve, but, well, I hope it will. Let's see. The pros are that a new player understands what cast is a tank buster, cleave, stack, etc. Without this, these players would in many cases never learn what these casts do. It's one thing to not know at first, and another to never know, and they just never seem to know the mechanics. It feels so much cleaner now. The game does a better job now of introducing players to fight mechanics, and they've standardized most of the indicators on the mechanics, whereas like a tank buster used to have various different indicators. It could be a cast bar. It could be like a couple of different symbols. Now it's like there's a pretty standard set of symbols used for each type of mechanic. So yeah, that to this extent, I guess this is correct. But it's not like a noob would never find out what a tank buster was. You would know. It's just the game didn't do a great job of teaching you, but you would find out one way or another. Let's see. The cons are that knowing this right away makes it easier and reduces the failure rate. Although they have tried to address that in the newer dungeon designs, the issue has become lack of RNG or lack of dungeon variety overall. Well, these points aren't really related. It's basically saying that because it's easier to understand the game now, people are failing less. Yes, that's probably true, but then that's not necessarily related to lack of RNG or lack of dungeon variety. Those are separate topics. See, with rotations, there were similar issues. Players would sometimes never figure out how to do their rotation right and do significantly less damage as a result. Easy example could be summoning Titan all the time on Summoner. There were good parts and bad parts to their method of simplifying it. The good parts are things like making lone GCDs, such as ranged attacks not interrupt melee combos. Yeah, that one used to be if you were playing a tank and you did threw a tomahawk on warrior, it would break your combo. Making abilities like flourish not override all your procs, which are just annoying things more than anything. And yet, for some reason, sprint on red mage will still eat your dual cast. So we got a little bit more work to do, I think. Let's see. The bad parts were removing the ability to get rewarded for playing well, such as increased damage on abilities for having both DOTs up on Bard, cones on warrior and samurai, cleric stance, although Dark Knight was admittedly over the top for most players. That could have kept a lot of the interaction between abilities on Dark Knight, reward using it situationally, the healer mattering in regular content, etc. This guy's throwing a lot of stuff at the wall here. It's too hard to even I can't find just a general homogenous point here. There's just a lot of stuff being addressed in this post. I don't even know why I read the whole thing. It's not necessarily wrong about most of this, but it's also just what are we getting at here? I don't know why people are panicking. I've been here since 1.x and ARR. This ain't nothing. Well, there's no need to panic, but I can see why people would be concerned about the direction the game is going because, again, it's been trending toward getting easier, more simplistic, and also more lighthearted, particularly with Dawntrail, more lighthearted. But it's trending in a direction to where it feels like if it keeps moving in this same direction, it will become unfun after a long enough time. And so it feels like a correction is needed. It's obvious that the direction the game is going right now is losing popularity, and people don't want to see that happen. So I can see where the concern comes from. Personally, I feel like it seems like the devs are getting further out of touch with the player base as time goes on, which means they're going to more and more make decisions that prove to be unpopular. I hope that they can rectify that. I hope that they can get back in touch with the player base and figure out what it is people actually want, or at least a good average of things that people want so that they can make more people happy with the game. But yeah, as it is now, I think there's concern about the direction that it's moving in. Let's see. I didn't watch the video, but let me guess. If only Square Enix had listened to Lucy Pyre and done exactly what they think would have made them happy, then the game wouldn't be experiencing a decline. While I respect that they could say whatever they want about the game, I don't agree that 14 is in decline or that it needs saving. Every game has its ups and downs. 14 continues to have a dedicated player base. Why are we shadowboxing here? If you aren't going to watch the video, you shouldn't make a guess. You should probably just watch it. See, it's easy to point fingers and say, if only they'd done X, Y, or Z, but game development is incredibly complex, and what makes one player happy might alienate another. Square Enix has made plenty of decisions I don't personally love, but they've also done a lot right to keep the game alive and evolving for over a decade. Yeah, game development hard, I'm afraid, just does not hold up as an excuse. It is. Obviously, it's complex, especially when you're dealing with 10 years of different programmers piling on layers of spaghetti code. Yes, it's complex, but at the end of the day, we just want the product to be good. We don't necessarily care how it's made. It doesn't really hold up, but yeah, fair enough. Whatever. You're right, it's hard, but we still want better. And what makes one player happy might alienate another. This is kind of the eternal problem, right? Where it's like with an MMO that has millions of players, you're never going to satisfy everyone. This actually is true. You will never satisfy everybody because you got to balance out things that people like, things that are popular versus things that are unpopular, but it can be hard to figure that out because there's a lot of different types of players. And so I usually use healing as an example where you've got hardcore players like Lucy Pyre would have been, someone who does ultimates, who does raiding, who's, really good at the job, understands what job they're playing and how to apply it in a fight. And those are people that will say, oh, healing is too easy, it's too boring, you make it more interesting, please. Make healing harder, make it more interesting. Add some more mechanics to it, give it more buttons. But then on the other hand, you've got the casual player base who believe that healing is difficult and are afraid to queue as healer because they don't want to let somebody die and feel like they messed up. And so it's you can't really reconcile those two things. You're never going to be able to make something that both of those players are satisfied with. So this is the thing with Astro, for example. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of Astro mains, were concerned because Astro changes every expansion. And so there's always, complaints that, oh, it's getting reworked, it's getting simplified, it's being dumbed down, it's being made boring. But then for people that don't main Astro, they have the perception that it's an incredibly difficult and complicated job, and they're afraid to even touch it because it's too hard to understand. It's the same thing I always say, like, as a Scholar main, I love Scholar, I think it's really easy, but people that don't play Scholar think it's like difficult and complicated. It's actually not, but that's the perception. And so you've got a situation where not that many people want to play healer, and not that many people play healer at a high level. So if you make healer more difficult and more engaging for the healer mains, you're going to alienate more people that potentially would have become healer mains, and then you end up with a problem where it's like, now it's too hard for the casual player, even if it's more fun for the hardcore player. You can't balance around hardcore, so, but yeah, that's that issue, right? Like, you can't please everybody. You got to try and find somewhere in the middle ground that makes as many people happy as possible. The thing with an MMO like this one, though, is there's multiple different difficulty levels, and so they don't necessarily have to make every piece of content appeal to every player, but they need to make sure that every player has content that they find appealing. And so here's where there's a lot of complaints early Dawntrail. All there is to do is raiding. We got Savage raids, and now there's an ultimate, and now there's Cloud of Darkness, which is too hard, and there's nothing for people that don't want to raid. And that's just it, right? It's like, if you're going to do like a lot of like more difficult raiding content, you also need to make sure that there's stuff for more casual combat players to enjoy. And this all goes back to what I keep saying over and over again. We just need to get the instances earlier in the expansion, or at least something equivalent, like something to do. It could be relics. It doesn't even have to be the instance. We get relics earlier or the instance earlier, but something needs to come out for like the fabled mid-core, which I still think is kind of a meme. But there is truth that there are a lot of players that want combat content that isn't just one dungeon or the same normal mode raids. Like, they're looking for something more long-term and engaging, something that will engage them the way that raiders are engaged by Savage. But yeah, it's the release schedule that creates this problem, because like by the end of the expansion we'll have content for everybody. It's just taking a little too long for it to all get here. So it's a development nightmare though. Oh, probably. That's the thing though, like the early combat content for casual players doesn't have to be the instance. Like, we don't have to get the instance earlier, but we need something earlier. Shared fate is not enough. The shared fate is not enough. Let's see, here's someone's response to that previous one. 14 isn't growing, that's the entire point. The game has 1.5 bad expansions and the player base cratered, and the devs refuse to listen to any suggestions we offer them. Player base isn't resilient. They have either left or created their own content through mods. I don't think it's accurate to say that the player base cratered, but it is declining. If you compare Endwalker to Dawntrail, just like, expansion high and then patch low and then patch high and then patch low, they're still pretty similar. Dawntrail is lower, but it's not cratered. Cratered would be like there's nobody left anymore. Like, we're following a similar trend to what expansions usually do, but it is declining, at least at present. Although the trouble with this though is a lot of people were pretty put off by Dawntrail, because the MSQ matters probably more than anything else in terms of the perception of the game. There's like raid chads that are going to log in and clear the raid tier and do their re-clears and then do their ultimates. But for like outside perception of the game, the thing that's always been sold on is the MSQ. And so like that's kind of the thing that gets people's foot in the door. By 7.0 being not well received as a story, that's going to cause some people to not come back until 8.0. There are players that will not touch the patches. They'll just wait till the next expansion. And so with Dawntrail being where it's at player-wise, even if the later patches actually help bring some people back, I think there's a lot of people that won't come back until the next expansion, if it's good. If it's good. 8.0, they really got to make sure that they get the writing correct. As expansions continue, I think the story being required is not going to be good in the long run for new players. Oh yeah, that's been a problem forever, which is, there's hundreds of hours of story, and in order to play current content, you have to go through the story. Everything's tied to the story, so that's been a problem for a while. There's not really an easy way to solve it. We thought that Dawntrail would be a good jumping on point as like, okay, the Zodiac saga is over, so if you want to start a new character, you could start at Dawntrail. That would have been an elegant solution, but then they can't sell level skips, and so like it needs a restructuring if they want to solve that problem. But we'll have to wait and see, because yeah, the longer the story gets, obviously the more upfront investment there is to actually get into the game, and that is something that has always been an issue, but it's obviously becoming even worse over time. And then if you have to factor in that people are going to say, this is what the public perception is, this is what I hear the most when I see people recommending the game. They say, Realm Reborn is boring, but if you get through it, it's worth it. Stormblood is boring, but if you get through it, it's worth it. And now we're going to have Dawntrail on top of that, where it's like, you're going to reach a point where people have so many asterisks on the MSQ, where it's like, Realm Reborn sucks, Heaven's Word's good, Stormblood sucks, Shadowbringers Endwalker good, Dawntrail sucks. You know, like, it's getting murky. Like, they got to find a way to onboard players later in the story, because, yeah, having to go through everything, especially when some of it is, you know, of varying quality, it's gonna make it a lot harder to get new players into the game. It already does. Players who left 14 will probably come back when 7.2 drops. Some of them will. There's a lot of people that log in for a patch, will play for a week, and then log out until the next patch, unsubscribe, and then come back when the next patch is out. But we gotta wait and see how many people come back for 7.2. That's gonna be very telling. I'm done, I think. I think a lot of people are, but yeah, we'll find out when the patch comes out. Unlike what some people daydream about, history shows that making veterans leave the game leads to its decline, and considering the downtrend of MMOs, this is probably several times worse than in other genres. Yes and no. Like, obviously, you need to have something that appeals to people long term, but what matters in an MMO is replacement rate. It's like, can you get as many players as you're losing? Can you replace the people that are leaving? Because sometimes you take a game that's kind of whatever, and you change it to make it more publicly appealing, and then you end up courting a different audience, but one that's larger. So a good example here is actually Fortnite. Fortnite started out as a survival base building game, Save the World. Everybody remember Fortnite Save the World. Nobody played it. And then they made a battle royale mode, and the size of the audience for the battle royale utterly eclipsed the player base for the original game. And so basically what I'm saying is Final Fantasy XIV should become a battle royale game. No, but you know, as a game like changes over time, it can appeal to a different audience, which can end up being a bigger audience than it originally had. So yeah, it's good to have veteran players. It's good to have people that are given a reason to stick around a long time, but it's also like, it's viable as well to pursue a larger audience if you think you can get one, which I think is what Square has tried to do by making the game more simplistic over time. It's just, we're seeing that there's limitations to that, you know, that doesn't work indefinitely, and you do need to give people an incentive to stick around. Mass leaving with veterans can easily kick a company into gear too. Look at the reception of the latest WoW expansion. Yeah, ARR isn't bad. Oh, I agree. I think ARR is fine, but I'm just saying, like, public perception is people say it's boring. Let's jump to the last page of this thread and just close this out. No, what better way? Hey, I've been playing since 1.0. This game's in an awful state and feels like it's dying. Hope that helps. Well, there you go. Let Memento get the final word on that topic. Yeah, I don't know. I might have to actually watch that video, though, because, again, we were talking about the Lucy Pyre video originally. That's where we started, but I haven't watched the video, so I can't comment specifically on it. But, you know, we obviously have a lot to say on the topic of the game, whether it's declining or not. Furniture and the issue of having to glitch. Oh, my gosh. I see the name of the person that posted this and I'm scared to read it, but let's do it because I've been saying this for a while, but let's see what this person has to say. So I'm just going to bring this up. Why is this even a thing still? We have to glitch for placement of items when wouldn't it be simpler to create a third category as floor kin pieces such as stages, the lofts, and many other items that could count as the floor itself, allowing free placement. I don't know if it's even possible to do what I want with the glitch, aka put the coffin on a stage. Yeah, I actually agree. The housing system for like customizing your layouts, like putting furniture down, is really archaic, and it seems like it could be so simple to either give us coordinates, I want an XYZ snap, or to be able to just place objects in the air, float them so that not everything has to drop down to the floor. But then, like, yeah, when you factor in that there is a table system so that some objects can snap to a table, it makes it really confusing that not every object can be placed on a table. Like, why not? Like, it is that simple and it exists. I know it does, but I'm saying it should be official in the game and not a mod. There's no reason for it not to just exist. One day the person who made it will get banned and we'll get it. I hope so. Because yeah, I would like housing a lot more if you could do fancy layouts without having to rely on really inconvenient float glitches. As someone who only plays vanilla, I'm glad that they're apparently paying attention to the housing system because they're adding the new pillarless layouts. They've been tossing around the idea of customizing interior size regardless of housing exterior size. You know, so it's like they're toying with ideas with the housing system this expansion, but I really hope that they'll create a better placement system for furniture sometime because, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous that if you want to make a really nice layout, you basically have to rely on mods to do it. Because if you want to float glitch stuff yourself, you can. And the game obviously supports placing objects in 3D space because the float glitch allows the object to be placed anywhere, but the process of manually doing the glitch takes several minutes. It's extremely easy to mess up and it's very annoying. So I don't know why we don't just get coordinate snapping. But anyway. No more Necromancer run ruined by DC. Keep getting DC'd in Palace of the Dead and can't do anything about it, especially recently with the DDoS. Can we please have at least 2 to 3 minutes to reconnect before calling it game over? Probably one of the most fun solo achievements you can go for, but that alone is making me less and less enthusiastic about starting another run. Not really much to say on that. Yeah, they should have some kind of disconnect protection. Something that's not exploitable, so it's like, yeah, that's about it. That's all there really is to say. You can get disconnect protection if you wait 12 to 24 hours before relogging. You'll have your save rolled back. What? Explorer mode for other content. They haven't said a word about adding it to other content than dungeons since they finished those, have they? I think Alliance raids and the new variant dungeons especially would really benefit from it. That was a thread from last year. Pretty much agree though, yeah, there's no reason not to have Explorer mode for other dungeons. It would be cool. We've already got it, you know, Explorer mode, so like adding it to more stuff would be cool, just for like picture taking purposes and whatnot. I see no reason not to. That's an easy in and out thread. Ranjit's fight style would make a brilliant pet job. This is a thread from 2019. Ranjit's fighting style is monk. He just happens to have a dragon with him, and then he turns into Reaper. Being able to summon a dragon and then draw it into yourself to increase your strength or defense would be cool, and then wielding a scythe, count me in. Okay, so this obviously was posted before Reaper was announced, but yeah, Ranjit was obviously a teaser for Reaper. Who's Necro posting? I don't know. I keep telling people, every video I say this, if there's a thread from more than like a year ago about an issue that's no longer relevant, don't bump the thread. The only threads from 24 that should still be getting responded to are ones that are relevant to ongoing issues. But if it's something that's been solved a long time ago, like don't post on that. It's common forum etiquette, but it's honestly, it's Square Enix's fault for having forums that don't purge old threads, so it is what it is. But quick question about the new field operations. Oh no, not this guy. As I just realized they were always associated with relics, and that meant 2-hit grinding fates in parties of 30 and queuing ARR alliances. That's going to end up mandatory again, isn't it? I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. You can already tell from my question, I'm probably not doing that anymore. I already did a couple non-scaling 2-hit hunt farms, and that was enough. Not without connections in game anymore. I'll try, but there's a lot of the same old that is all I've been feeding. Recently, I can't bear it, especially not as I'm not even interested in the relic now, I'm not invested in my character, and I only sub temporarily. Decide for yourselves if this is something that is going to apply to any other prospective returners. I'm just trying to recalibrate my likely intentions early. So basically, this is someone saying, I don't like Bazia, I don't like Eureka, and I don't like relics being tied to them, therefore I'm not going to play the new instance zone. Why post a thread about it? Like, what's the point of this thread? This is a person that said they were gonna quit like a year ago and has posted on the forums ever since. Yeah, dear diary, exactly. This is someone that is like, I can't tell if they're actually serious and just a goober or if it's just actual trolling, because they post constantly talking about how they're quitting the game, but they never leave. I think he's genuinely asking, if not, it's just bait. He says, this is going to end up mandatory for the relic again, isn't it? I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. You can already tell I'm probably not doing that anymore. It's like he's already foregone the conclusion. There's no point in asking. But yeah, for the latest live letter, they announced phantom weapons, I think, which heavily implies that it's going to be directly tied to the Occult Crescent with the phantom job system. So yeah. Probably going to be the exact same structure Bazia had. Petition to Square Enix, start banning modding users who engage in 18+ activities immediately. Lol. We probably don't need to dwell on this, but like, you get banned if you break the terms of service. That's basically what it comes down to. So you're allowed to have an adult conversation with someone in DMs or in private. You just can't do it in public spaces. And basically that's what it comes down to. As long as you're being decent publicly, then like they can't really ban you for it. I don't like mods. I don't like the amount of ERP that seems prevalent in this game, but like it is what it is, right? It's technically not against the rules because online interactions are not rated by the ESRB. Haven of Degeneracy, give me a break, dude. I mean, is it wrong though? Where did he say that? Where does it say that? I need to see it. They are turning this game into a haven for degeneracy. I don't know, man. I've been on Crystal like a long time. I've been on Crystal for a long time. Let's see. Let's see it. Let's ask the question. Is he wrong though? Where's it at? Oh, here we go. What's in this other tab over here? Let's see. Apollo, lewd and crude. That's their tagline, I guess. This is just a G-Post service. Anime night at Moonlit Kiss. There's people advertising. So far, actually, this is pretty chill. No, I've seen much worse. I mean, it's Sunday. Usually Sunday is pretty, like, slow on Crystal. I'm not seeing anything too crazy. Here we go. Providence Bathhouse, 18+ NSFW. That's a little questionable. Let's see, we got RP 18 plus LGBTQ Red Moon opens. Just saying 18 plus doesn't really mean anything. So it implies that there's probably questionable things going on, but it doesn't inherently mean that it's bad. See, we got 21 plus Splash Bathhouse. There's a lot of bathhouses these days. We're friends now. We're having soft tacos later. Okay, sounds great. Criminal Jazz Lounge. Another bathhouse. You know what? Crystal's pretty tame today, guys. Even the ERPers might be getting bored. It's usually way worse than this. There's no feet pics for sale. There's nobody looking for e-girlfriends. Who was that Femelizan that was looking for a dommy mommy or whatever? Like, we don't have any of the fun stuff up on the Party Finder today. I think the ERPers are getting bored. All right. The Haven of Degeneracy argument has been refuted. But let me tell you, I've seen some things over my years. You'll find it if you look for it. It is out there. Let me see. This thread is probably a waste of time. Do you think the game will get better? And if so, when? This is the guy that just makes a thread every day complaining about Cloud of Darkness. Get your bingo cards out. Let's see if he mentions Cloud of Darkness. Do you think the game will ever get better? And if so, when? Recently took a vacation off 14 to broaden my horizons. I've always been a one-game Andy and desperately afraid of being on my own for more than 5 minutes. Well, that sounds like a personal problem. So the idea of not playing FF14 was like having a part of myself gutted. I kept making excuses why I should keep playing the game. Is this an elaborate troll? It's not even that elaborate. Let's see, my friends are here, like 3 of them. How will I function without my Warrior of Light for 5 minutes? This seems like it's sarcastic. New games are scary and I can't be asked to learn the controls. This has got to be a troll. No other good MMOs on the market right now that fill an FF14. Greetings from Wilds. After finally cutting the umbilical cord, I was able to take a look at the game in hindsight, and a week isn't enough to form that, but it's been something I've been thinking about since 6.3. I noticed when playing Wilds what real gameplay felt like, and it's great to see a game that cares about its lore. I noticed when watching Sonic 3 what a good, compelling story looks like. Okay, alright, you got me. I noticed when replaying some of the older titles like Kingdom Hearts now, how good boss battles and combat systems can look. Alright, you win. I read your thread, you got me, you win. It all got me thinking. I'm looking for something that I just don't find in FF14. I'm even starting to wonder if I ever found it. Sega listens to its fans, Capcom listens to feedback, Square used to put quality and ingenuity first, but with FF14 I don't feel hopeful things will get better. I'm dreading they always just stay the same, because that's all we've ever seen, and so I put it to you. What do you think? Is there hope for or is FF14 an unavoidable sinking ship? If the latter, what's keeping you around? If you thought it was an unavoidably sinking ship, I feel like most people in that case would unsub. So yeah, like if you would think that, why would you stick around? Most people probably wouldn't, but he had us in the first half. He didn't even really have me in the first half. This part kind of raised my eyebrow. Desperately afraid of being on my own for more than 5 minutes. Yeah, because again, this guy made a thread like every day about how Cloud of Darkness was too hard. So like, I didn't know what to think because it seemed like they were genuine complaints. But now now I don't know anymore. Like all the replies are just one sentence. Like everybody knew better than to put effort into this. Oh no. Except for this one. Oh, good lord, I ain't reading all that. This person posts like the same thing in every thread, which is basically to say like, oh, I'm thinking about quitting again, blah, blah, blah. In the end, this is not about a game being good or bad. It's about your very personal mindset. Here's a genuine response. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, like if you enjoy the game, play it. If you don't enjoy it, don't play it. It's really not that complicated. Me, FF14 is not a live or death thing. It's a pastime I see as my home away from home experience to get away from all the real world trouble for a time at least. I do not want it to be challenging or hard. I don't have to prove anything. I don't care about 2-minute buff windows, Java homogenization, formulaic raids, and all the other stuff everybody hears in arms about. I log in, dabble around a bit, and am happy. As long as FF14 is scratching that itch of mine, I will continue to play it, and when it does no longer, I'll leave, like I left WoW years ago, after it turned into a glorified lobby for esports nonsense, now with additional light speed mount gimmickry. This is pretty much like the conclusion to all this, is just yeah, like, play the game if you enjoy it. If you stop enjoying it, stop playing it. It's really not that complicated. Well, here's a fun one. Yes, the seasonal events are worse now. No, it wasn't always like this. We really don't need to dig too deep on this one. It's just a timeline of what was in the seasonal events then versus now. But it is a topic I've obviously had a lot to say about, man. Holy crap, yeah, the seasonal events. Ever since Dawntrail, really, yeah, the seasonal events have been very lackluster. Endwalker, it was hit or miss. Sometimes they would have fun ones, but then other times it'd just be talk to 3 people. And Dawntrail seems like it's all been talk to 3 people. There's like almost nothing. It's pretty disappointing, honestly. I'm hoping that they make the events fun in the future, but I don't know anymore. Because yeah, so often now when an event pops up, it just feels like an afterthought. Like somebody had to slap together something, like they did their homework the day before, you know, that's what it feels like a lot of these are. I wish that they would give us more interactive events that actually added things to do. I like it when there's instances and fate events and boss fights and like just little things, mini games, just something, anything. But yeah, lately it's just you sit through a 5-minute cutscene and then you accept your reward and leave. Whereas what an event ideally should do is give players an excuse to get together and do something fun with each other. And so if all there is to do is a quick quest and then there's like, you know, a different colored flower around the limbs of Aetherite, that's not very compelling. You want to give people a reason to come together and something for them to do. And yeah, they don't really do that much anymore. The events have been progressively getting worse, and I really wish that they would put a little bit more effort into them. It's kind of annoying because like there's so many mini games and instances and whatnot from previous events that surely they could just reuse those if they wanted to. Like, at least if we aren't getting anything new, give us something old that was fun, but they don't even really do that. So yeah, I wish that they would improve the seasonal events again. Because that's another thing where like during downtime, in between patches, you still got your little holidays. We got Little Ladies Day going on right now, but what is there to do in the Little Ladies Day event? It's a 10-minute quest. You receive your reward, which is a glam, and then there's like some scenery set up around Ul'dah, and that's the whole event. It's just... yeah, it's tragic. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, we've been at this for a while. Probably wrap this soon. There's not a whole lot going on in the forums today that wasn't already there. But let's have a quick gander, just make sure we didn't miss anything interesting. 14, the love-hate. This was posted yesterday. I wonder what it could be. Oh, God, couldn't it just be one paragraph? You know, I've criticized the game a lot over the years and agree with most of the community in regards to job design, but I feel as much as I hate the same old formula this game does over and over again with raid tiers and loot gains, the reason we all play it and come back to it is because there really isn't anything like it on the market. That's partly true, yeah. I started playing this in 2018 on my PS4 Pro, and my buddy sucked me in as I was very suspect about MMOs after all the time I put into WoW. It obviously grew on me, and many players later and many FCs later, here I am. I'll be honest, this is my go-to game. Said buddy always tells me I need a new game, but I love fighting games, and when I'm not playing those or dying in Warcraft 2, I'm here. For all the bad this game has, an MMO that's fun and functional and looks great on console is pretty impressive. WoW should be on console, but because of necessary add-ons, it never will be. My sub runs out April 3rd, and it just dawned on me that if I really quit, I'm gonna miss it. Not that I don't have other games to play, it's just nothing really fills the gaming void like 14. I love my character and my glams, and many of us have spent thousands of hours in this game together, and I guess the point of this message is instead of attacking the devs for all the stuff we hate, maybe remind them that we actually love this game, and that's why we criticize it so vigorously. We want it to be better, and are frustrated our concerns always seem ignored. If a dev team really cared, they would listen to their community, especially in a sub-based MMO. Blizzard has been making some seriously hot garbage the last decade, but in WoW, they're listening far more than Square. It feels like a slap in the face to us all, and I wish they would understand that. Yeah, he's got a couple of good points here, but I don't know. I think some people are a little bit too black and white with their relationship with the game, where it's like, just because you unsubscribe doesn't mean you have to quit forever. If you don't like the game right now, it's actually a good thing to unsubscribe. Because if the sub numbers start to drop from enough people not liking the game, then Square's going to start looking at why, because the game's not going to die, but it can change for the better, or at least it can change in ways that appeal to more players. But if everybody stays subscribed, then why would you change course when things are already smooth sailing, right? So if Square never loses any money, they're not going to think that they need to do anything differently, and they'll just keep releasing the same formula over and over again. But if you unsubscribe, that doesn't mean you can never come back. It doesn't have to be forever. If you don't like the game right now, you can just not play it. You could always anticipate coming back when you feel like coming back again. That's how I treat RuneScape, like I always say. And I'm a long-time RuneScape player. I don't play RuneScape all the time. I play it when I want to play it, which is sometimes. I'll go on long benders, and sometimes I'll go on long breaks. It just depends, FF14, I've been playing pretty religiously for 4 years, but if I stop enjoying it, you best believe I'd be willing to take a break from it, step away and just, play something else instead, and then come back to it when I feel like playing it again. But yeah. To his latter point, it does kind of feel like I said earlier, the devs are not quite as in tune with the community anymore. And I hope that they can start to repair that, bridge that gap again. But it's also tough because the player base is international, it's worldwide now. And so people always say that the devs mostly cater to the Japanese audience, which does seem to be true. But then we end up with this issue where the culture in-game across regions is different depending on where you go. And so what people look for in the game is a little bit different depending on the region. So I'm not sure if it's like, are the devs truly out of touch with the player base, or were they never in touch with the Western audience in the first place? You know what I mean? Like maybe they were just always kind of like out of touch with us, and maybe they're still in tune with the Japanese audience. I'm not sure, but it does feel like they've drifted more, and I hope that they can kind of get a better grasp on what players are actually looking for, because it seems like lately they have been missing the mark. But yeah, let's see. We're on page 2 now. There's, again, not as many new threads this week, so we probably won't have much to read here, but let's just make sure we aren't missing anything. Oh yes, please stop letting people unsync Savage. So this thread's from 4 years ago. People who just run content unsynced clearly don't care about all the hard work and effort the devs put into Savage fights. Did we read this last? I feel like we talked about this last time. But basically the idea is that, yeah, like the fights would be more interesting if you could still do them synced, but the problem is, like, the game design changes from expansion to expansion. So, like, the toolkits that jobs have available at level 70 in Stormblood are not the same as what they have available at level 70 in Dawntrail. And so, yeah, it's never going to be the same experience no matter what. And they would have to constantly keep tuning the fights and updating them in order to make it consistent, which is not worth it. So it's just kind of whatever. I wish there was an incentive to do Savage fights synced, though. Like, if there was some reward that was exclusive only to the synced version or something like that, like maybe like a Wondrous Tales type thing, but where it forced you to sync it. I don't know. Like, I wish there was more incentive to do old Savage synced, because it could be interesting content in times like now where there's not much going on. But alas, that's not the way it is. So, overworld design, rant and feedback. Oh boy. Oh god. Oh. Let's see. Let's just skip to, so we could probably guess what most of the complaint is. We've complained a lot about the overworld here as well, which is, you know, the new maps. They're mostly empty. There's not that many buildings you can go inside. They're laid out less efficiently, etc., etc. There's not much to do in the world, etc. But let's see this guy's proposed solution. So, skirmishes like Bosnia. This is actually something we talked about a lot on here, but like, if the overworld was more like Bosnia, that would be really cool, but it'll probably never happen. It's a really cool idea, but it probably would never happen. But yeah, not much more to say on that. I wish that the overworld was more like Bosnia, yes. Having queuable super fates that spawn at a regular interval, having on-map dungeons that spawn at a regular interval, like, that stuff is all really cool. I wish they used more of those ideas outside of the exploratory zone. Mini games like mount racing, oh no. Oh no. Didn't we talk about this, like, last week? Being able to race on things that aren't a Choco. I pitched this idea last week. I was riding around on the mono wheel, triple triad, etc. Yeah, overworld minigames could be a fun idea. It is kind of surprising that there are none, other than, like, if you include treasure maps as a mini game. But FF11 had Beastmen invasions and an expansion city. If you didn't defend well, some NPCs had to go get saved from the Beastmen base. There's fate events like that in Realm Reborn. Like, that's the Assault on High Bridge storyline does that. They don't really have dynamic fates like that these days, though, because yeah, it used to be like in Realm Reborn there was some fate change where if you failed at one step you would get an alternate ending. PvP arenas, yeah, you can go even further beyond making every arena a special set of rules, 4x4, no healing duels, etc. This is not a terrible idea, but I don't think enough people care about PvP. Here's my idea. I'm gonna take this guy's idea and co-opt it into my own idea. Get rid of the PvP arenas and make PvE arenas. Don't do PvP arenas, do PvE arenas. So it's like, put an arena on a map and have a fate chain in the arena, except one that's actually difficult. And so you need to get players to like, imagine a chain, an entire fate chain of super bosses that progressively get harder. And so you don't need to create any new systems. You just use the fate system and just have bosses in the same spot that get more difficult as it progresses. And then if you get to the end, we've already seen with Realm Reborn that they're able to spawn NPCs based off of clearing fates. And so you could have like a vendor spawn or have it drop like a minion or something. This would be easy. But yeah, I'm stealing this guy's idea and turning it into my own idea. Anyway, Frosty Reception. Coolest and most fun instance duty to date. And I was so excited for quests like this. Oh, is this the Thancred? That's the Thancred one, right? Backlash being difficult and frustrating. Couldn't help but be at a loss for words and disappointed. Give us optional duties like this, please. Yeah, better MSQ duties, basically, is what this point is about. But netcode trashes big hunts already. But fate events have scaling, though. Fate events have, they've got level scaling and they've got eye level sync. What was Frosty Reception? I'm pretty sure it was the Thancred stealth duty. Unless he's talking about In From the Cold. He might be getting the wrong name for In From the Cold, but it would have to be one of those, either Thancred or In From the Cold. Let's see, there we got overworld zones being wide and empty areas makes them so boring. Yep. It's actually like, it's really impressive how good of a job they did with the map design on Realm Reborn. But people don't notice it as much anymore because now that there's flight in ARR, you just fly over top everything. But when you actually travel the ARR zones on foot, they're really well laid out. Like they feel big, even though they're tiny. Most of them are tiny, but they feel really big when you walk around them on foot. Whereas, you know, the expansion zones feel big because they are big, but they don't have as much in them. And so it's just like everything's further apart and it's just kind of arbitrarily further apart. There's like nothing in between. So why would they put effort into the zones if people will just fly everywhere anyways? Well, that's a gameplay problem. You need to create an incentive for people to not just fly everywhere. But yeah, better overworld. I think people have been calling for that for a long time. I still agree. I hope that they do it someday, but the overworld, unfortunately, has had the exact same activities in it ever since Heavensward, so it's not optimistic, but I do hope that at some point they reevaluate it, especially because eventually there's got to come a time where they stop adding zones. Like, the game can't expand indefinitely. They can't just keep adding more and more zones. It's already at a point where we probably have too many because there are so many zones that you never have any reason to go back to, and they don't do a good job of recycling zones after an expansion ends. They should find a way to do that. They should find some way to keep old zones relevant because, like, how often do I ever go back to the Azim Steppe in Dawntrail? Pretty much never. There's no reason to. I wish there was some reason to. And with any luck, we'll probably see with the relic grind this expansion, they're going to send us back to like Endwalker Fates or Shadowbringers Fates or something like that. So we'll probably be revisiting some of the old zones just on like various steps of the relic. But yeah, I wish there were like additional things like baked into either the story or the gameplay mechanics to where there was more like constant reason to revisit some of these places, because when every expansion only takes place in the 6 zones that get added for that expansion, it makes it feel smaller. Even though the world is gigantic, it feels small because you're only ever focused on one thing at a time. Like, I don't know. Valve's been doing that for 2 decades now. I guess they're just following Blizzard's footsteps in that regard. Yeah, I mean, I guess like technically if they want to, they could infinitely expand the map. You know, there's nothing preventing them from just continuing to add more zones, but it would be better if they made good use of the ones that are already there. Like, I feel like we don't need 6 zones in an expansion, and I wish that some of the world would get updated a little bit, but what can you really do? Overworld needs some work in general. I think it's been half-baked for a long time, and I hope that someday they take a look at the overworld, but let's see. I think we're running out of threads here, so we'll just have a couple more and then we'll get into the game. What is this? Probably a long shot. Does anyone have numbers for the luminous crystal drop rate for the anima weapon? Bro, what? The luminous crystal drop rate. This is from 3 years ago, I know, but like, I don't know. I feel like I got pretty good drops on it when I did it. I did the luminous crystal grind at the same time as the Basia memories grind and while leveling jobs from 50 to 60. And so I was like triple dipping on that grind. And so it went by really quickly for me. But as for what the drop rate is, I have no idea. FF14 has the worst dungeons. I think we read this thread already, but basically, yeah, dungeons bad. We could skip that. We had that conversation last week. This is the problem we're going to run into is like, yeah, thankfully with the live letter coming out this weekend, there will be more to discuss. But yeah, for right now, it's kind of like slim pickings. Oh yeah, there's a couple new posts on the hero thread. I just don't see how anyone can claim that Midlanders aren't peak. I'm just like, I need one refutation. It hasn't happened yet. I need to hear it from someone that's not a furry or a scaly. Hasn't happened yet. Have you considered Femme Ellison? Femme Ellison are great. I just don't think they're as great as Midlanders, that's all. I mean, come on. Make no mistake. They are also exceptional. It goes without even saying. But Midlanders, they are not. What's the pipeline for Highlanders? The pipeline is basically, well, there's the male Highlander to Catgirl pipeline. I feel like female Highlander more often funnels into Bunny Girl, but it like almost everything, like really when it breaks right down to it. The game is a giant garbage disposal that mashes everything up and turns it into Catgirls. At the end of the funnel is almost always Catgirls. But yeah, it just kind of depends on wherever you start. There's going to be different steps along the way. It's like Star Fox 64, where it's like, you know, you always end up in the same place, but you get there by taking a different route. Basically, Catgirls are Andros, that big face with the hands that you gotta shoot him in the blowy eyeballs. Let's see, here's one. Would you want account progression? So basically what this is talking about is having certain things tied to your account rather than your character. So that way if you made an alt, you could have some progress carry over. This would be incredibly useful. Would I want it? Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't exist. Oh well. The game is kind of designed in a way where you could do everything on one character. So like for some reason they allow you to have a million alts, but you're not really incentivized to actually make one. No, here's a post from 2022. Can we not shame people who don't like the MSQ? Oh man, this is a conversation that's very different today. But I mean, yeah, it's a pretty simple premise, right? It's like, hey, this has basically always been my perspective. I don't really care what people like or dislike. I'm willing to debate these things. I'm willing to talk about like the reasons why, because it's fun to have those conversations. It's fun to talk about the things I like about Realm Reborn and, the reasons that people don't like it. But like, I would never call somebody wrong for disagreeing with me. Like, someone likes Dawntrail, that's fine. I don't care. Like, it's not ruining my day to find out that someone likes a thing that I don't like or vice versa. But somebody brought this thread back from the dead. Of course, it was this guy. How was he reading a thread from 3 years ago? I know this dude spends a lot of time on the forums, but like, holy crap. And then there's this guy that just follows him around responding to all his posts. That's like just as bad. And then there's this guy that also posts on every thread. There's like 3 people on the forums and me. And these 3 people on the forums might also be me. You guys don't know that. This is why forums should die. No, forums are great. It's just they're better when there's more than 3 people on them. Everyone in the forum is Cider's also. I do play male Highlanders. I mean, what? Actually, I don't, but I should. How great it would be to be a male Highlander instead of that thing. Been doomed to a life of mad babydom. I don't know how my channel would have ever gotten started if I wasn't a mad baby instead of, like something. If I was a male Highlander from day one, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I probably wouldn't even play the game anymore. I would have moved on, more than likely. But man, it would be awesome to not be trapped in the mad baby world. Actually, if I played a male Highlander, there would be no mad because small, and probably I would be making RuneScape content, streaming RuneScape, because that's what I was doing before Final Fantasy. So like, I probably would have like still been doing the same thing, just on RuneScape instead. That would be the difference. If anything, I'd probably be making RuneScape content. I'd probably still work at a retail store, but somewhere out there's an alternate universe where we did not become mad because small, and I became something else instead. I wonder what that could possibly be. I guess it's I guess there's there's an alternate universe where instead of Charity Nineheart, instead of mad because small, there's an alternate universe where I became Red Thunder. And now I just post on the forums all day. This could just be me from another timeline. Let's see, this thread popped up and I don't know, like, it basically says that there's more rain than usual. Has anyone observed this? I haven't seen there to be any more precipitation in game than there always was. I think this person's just like probably losing it. What do you guys think? More rain? I feel like we've had a normal amount of rain in game. I don't think it's any different. Placebo, normal rain, yeah. I don't know. It's not seen any unusual amount of rain. Probably British. Well, yeah, me when I'm British. Stop the rain. I don't know what accent that was, but I guess that's what I sound like when I'm British. Let's see. We're starting to get to threads we read last week, which means we're pretty much at the end. A positive response. Seasonal event, little ladies. Wait, we got a positive thread? That can't exist. Oh no, it's this person again. No. Oh, put it in one paragraph, homie. Oh, what's positive about it? All right. For me, this seasonal event was way better than the last 2 or 3. Not every past seasonal event was highly involved story with its own minigame, and no, neither was this one. But the writing of the characters was way better. They had some individual personality rather than the literal bare minimum. I'm not even going to greet you with any individuality. Here's some irrelevant information that the last NPC told you I was going to give you. I thought the story was cute and made more simple sense. The NPCs had some modicum of effort to make sense in their surroundings. There was a nice nod to previous events' protagonists, and they used a new protagonist rather than rolling out last year's. Bro, the event was like 5 minutes long. What are you talking about? The event was good because the few characters that showed up had personalities? I guess. Like, what's the Little Ladies' Day event? You talk to the Seneschal, and he's like, there's a guy that's doing the performance, but we don't know where he went. Go look for him, idiot. He needs help with something. You go and talk to him, and he's like, I can't decide on what outfit to wear, so I decided to research Seneschals of the past. Go ask 3 people what they think. And then you do, and then you come back to him, and he's all like, okay, I think I know what I want to do now. And then he does this performance. I was wasted, trashed, drunk when I did this. And it took us like 4 hours because we kept going off on tangents. I think that was the M-Preg stream. But like nothing really, like, forgetting the Darling lady. Yeah, there was the seamstress. So it's like I said, I mean, if this person liked the event, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But like, I don't know. I feel like this is just like saying like there were characters. It was a quest. It had characters and they said dialogue. Like that's basically what this is. You're never gonna please everyone with the glam, but I was far past sick of the amount of contemporary clothing, and for once this was something else. Yeah, the glam is actually really good. This I agree on. I'd appreciate that they are willing to make concessions to those of us who prefer the fantasy look. I thought the glam was great for me personally. Criticisms. Oh, here we go. Wait, I thought this was a positive response. They made no effort with the NPCs' glams. Why are they all wearing the same 3 outfits? They aren't even that nuanced within those 3. It's like either they just stuck some placeholder glams on them and never got around to finishing that part off, or the person who knocked up the supporting character designs was an intern who literally started last week. Wait, knocked up? What? The person who knocked up the supporting character design. That's not the term that you would use in this sentence, but very well. Speaking of Mpreg, who literally started last week, who'd seen less of the game, that a 3-week sprout with no inspiration as to where to begin. There's like 3 outfits that people in Ul'dah wear because like it's the desert, and so people wear desert appropriate fashion. This is normal in the city states. They each have like, you know, common sets of gear that people wear because it's like the custom of the location. Let's see. Yoshi, can you please pass this link onto your scenarios designers, please? It's a link to a Eorzea collection. You've got literally tens of thousands of players who could do amazing things to glam your character in a single day, and many of them will work for free and sign an NDA if you want to approach them. No, this is just silly. Basically saying that the NPC outfits were too boring, but like the NPCs in the quest are like just average everyday Ul'dah folks, and so they're not gonna look like swagged out adventurers because they're not. It's jarring nowadays because the fashion that characters used to wear in Eorzea was always very medieval-esque, and you know, now we've got so much non-medieval fantasy stuff in the game that it always feels a little bit strange when you come back to some of those starter cities, because you can see how the art direction has like dramatically evolved from where it began. So that's where these plain looking clothes stand out, because back in the day, like player characters would have been wearing stuff that wasn't too much different. Let's see, this event was better. Not wow, not even wow, but it wasn't as totally awful as the last handful. So that's the positive thread. The positive response seasonal event, little ladies, was this event wasn't as totally awful as the last handful. Why do we read these? Why are we wasting our time? That said, if it's going to be this basic, you don't honestly get away with the NPC designs being so poor, not when we are now looking out for the worst. I'm probably only giving credit because the previous events were so bad, and this being just okay is not enough to get me to turn my sub back on. Why did I read this? Why are we here? Why did I even click on this? That's a better question. What does Daughter of Death have to say on the matter? I mean, it's interesting, not my kind of thought. Way too preppy and cheery. Why can't they do a dark romance or dark kind one day? Really pop idol? Really? Oh, pansy rainbow cheery can you get? Yes, I know there are real life pop idols who are more darker, but those are more of an expectation than the event is called Little Ladies Day. I miss Xenos. At least he would cut us and kick us around, and we did the same. What? So you think the way to make Little Ladies Day better is to put Xenos up there on stage? Why do we come to the forums, guys? I think this might be the last episode. There's no salvaging this place. There's like 5 people that post here, and I think we've become intimately familiar with them. There were 5 Xenos for the Little Ladies Day event. Yes, it's perfect. To be fair, it would be a lot more memorable. Well, so here's the Yoshi P no longer on board of directors thread. We talked about this last week. I kind of spliced it onto the video because I wasn't planning on doing it for the video. I just took the discussion from our stream and slapped it on the front of the video because it came out after the last forum video was recorded. But we got a lot of interesting comments on the video because I led with that story, and so that was the title and that was the thumbnail. There's quite a bit of debate, and it seems like everybody's got a different perspective on the matter. I don't actually know what's true or what's not, but the common counterpoint is that, well, actually he wanted to be off the board of directors forever because he wanted to focus on video games. And there was one question I wanted to ask about this, actually, because I know that Yoshi P has said in the past that he would rather focus on making video games, and that being on the board of directors is a lot of extra work and it takes his time away from focusing on making games. I've seen him say that in like live letters or whatever. But something a lot of people keep saying is that he's asked multiple times to step down from the board of directors and they keep telling him no. I saw a lot of people say that. I've never seen a citation on that. Like, where does that come from? Because it's not that I don't believe it, but I don't know what the source is on that. So I was curious if anybody knew sources they made it up. I don't think they did though. Like, I think it comes from somewhere. I just don't know where. But yeah, like that gets thrown around a lot. They say, oh, Yoshi P tried to step down multiple times and they just never let him. But like, I never find a citation on that. So that's the one where I'm not so sure about that. Whereas I do know that he has talked before about wanting to focus more on games. Like that part is like definitely true as far as I'm aware. Who is Automaton Media? I don't know. Some random website, but like the story has been reported on like several different gaming media related outlets. So it's like the story is true. He's not on the board of directors anymore. As far as I can tell, this was organized last year and it just didn't come into effect until like now. And so he's got like a couple weeks left before he's like properly out of that position. And now on this new management committee, which might have similar responsibilities, it's not clear. Japan work market is different. They don't just quit a job. Yeah, that's the thing. So the talking point forever at JP, companies promote people who make a great game to a position where they don't make games anymore. I don't even know if it's true at this point. That's why it's so awkward, because there's the different work culture with Japan, and so everybody's interpreting the information differently. And so like I don't know what's actually the case or not, which is why I largely said in the previous video that we kind of just have to wait and see what this is actually going to mean for the game. But there's a lot of people like just saying things about it that I'm not seeing citations for, and so that's why I was curious if anybody knew where that claim came from, because that's one that like I see thrown around a lot, but I don't see the actual source on it. Like you could look up interviews, transcriptions of him saying that he'd rather focus on games than the board. The article on Game Radar says there's a 23 interview he did where he said he tried to step down and wasn't able to, but the 23 interview is apparently in a paywalled Dutch newspaper, so I don't know. Interesting. Okay, as long as there is actually a transcription of it, that's just what I wanted to know. Like, is that information actually sourced from anywhere? Because it just gets thrown around a lot. But yeah, personally, I'm very skeptical of everything. I think that Yoshi P not being on the board of directors probably won't mean that he spends more time on FF14. Like, he's probably just gonna take the time that he was using on the board and it'll be filled with something else. Because again, he's still like upper level management. He's still gonna have a ton of other responsibilities. And so I don't think we're going to suddenly see an FF14 renaissance. You know, I don't think the game is going to suddenly start flourishing or whatever, and like all the content's going to get better or whatnot. Like I'm not that optimistic about it. I think most likely very little will change, if anything at all. But yeah, hopefully it's in some way a good thing. But then I've also had a lot of comments talking about the choice of words, because in the title and the thumbnail I say demoted. Did Yoshi P get demoted? And there's a lot of people like, well, no, obviously didn't get demoted. It was a restructuring. But like the thing to keep in mind is that restructuring is a way of avoiding having to demote people. It still like could functionally achieve the same effect though. So like in big companies like this, usually if your position is made redundant and you have to get either shuffled to a different position or removed, like that's kind of like the same function as being demoted. So it could be a good thing if it's something that Yoshi P actually wanted so that he could focus more on gaming. I just don't think that it isn't clear that that's what happened. So many people put him on such a pedestal. He worked a miracle. Don't expect him to do it again. I don't know. He was pedestalized back in Shadowbringers and even like early Endwalker, but I think now the illusion is kind of shattering, and now negative sentiment has been growing a lot, especially after FF16 didn't knock it out of the park. I think that also like swayed a lot of people's confidence, where it's like they're like, oh, here's the guy that, you know, directed FF14. He brought it back from ruin. He made Heavensward, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker. He's great. And then FF16 comes out and, you know, it's well received, but I haven't exactly seen glowing praise of it either. You know, it seems like it was just an okay game. And now with Dawntrail being what it is and FF14 trending the direction it has been, I think people are starting to become a lot more critical. Like the positive sentiment is no longer overshadowing the negative anymore. And so like, yeah, the overall perception is changing. If restructuring puts you out of a job or in a lower position, that's called being fired/demoted respectively. That was kind of my point. Yeah, like it's like a polite way of being demoted. It's just, you know, it's not clear if this was what Yoshi P wanted or if it was kind of imposed upon him. Because again, he said that he wants to focus more on making games and he doesn't like doing board member stuff, but he's still, again, an executive manager, so like obviously he's still going to have a lot of like higher level responsibilities. It doesn't mean that he's going to get more time to work on games necessarily, which means it might not specifically be, oh, he just wanted to, you know, have more time for games. Like, I don't know if this is the good thing that people make it sound like it is. It's also not the end of the world, but like, this is why I say we kind of got to just wait and see. Took too many smoke breaks. It's just one of those things where you have to acknowledge that FF14 has been like slowly bleeding players. It's not dying, but like it's definitely trending downward right now. And again, not just because of the patch cycle. There's a lot of negative sentiment around it. The game's been getting all kinds of bad press. The game's been getting all kinds of bad press. There's like, the player scope disaster. There was people complaining about various aspects of Dawntrail, the content cadence, all that stuff. And then even 16 actually had a considerable amount of like not so favorable press around it. And then the sales didn't knock it out of the park. So it's just one of those things where, his record has not been spotless lately. And so I can't imagine that wasn't taken into consideration. Let's not forget they did nothing to hype up the PC release to the point where the only promo for 16 was the fact people found drivers. Yeah, 16, like, as far as I understand it, it didn't sell very well on PC at all. But like, fans' work culture is apparently toxic. I believe there's merit when people say they weren't letting him resign. Also, when you resign, you have to let them know a year ahead of time, and you have to write the entire company a letter of apology. Even I'm pulling that factoid from a YouTube short. Yeah, I think it will depend on the company for sure, but like, obviously, like, yeah, Japanese work culture is very, very, very different from what we have in America, especially at a corporate level. Like, yeah, those people work themselves to death over there. It's crazy how much like effort they put into like positions like Yoshi P would have had. But I personally do not have enough understanding of it to be able to, read entirely between the lines. I just don't think that him being moved into a lower position, even if he has said multiple times that he like wanted less responsibilities, it still comes off as a bad thing. That's all. The compilation of people's Dawntrail review videos and you don't have one. Oh God. I feel like it's kind of too late to like dive into a Dawntrail review at this point because that's kind of like old news. So obviously I could still do one, but it's already been done to death. Most people have already decided how they feel about it. So like there's not going to be a huge market for that. And there's not much I can say that hasn't been said already by other people, even if my perspective is going to be probably a little bit different from all of them just because like I'm not super doomer about it, but I also have a lot of grievances with it. But again, I think that's not an entirely uncommon sentiment, so I don't know if there's any like new, fresh perspective I could add to it. So if I do any type of MSQ review for it, I'll probably just wait till 7.3 when the story's properly over. It's at a point where I basically have to replay it to like really go in depth about it. Lucy made 200,000 views on her Doom post and she doesn't even play. Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty like normal numbers for a Lucy Pyre video. Like she just has a big audience. So combine having a big innate audience with the popular sentiment of Dawntrail bad, especially at a point like now where it's in a huge content lull, like of course it did really well. That's the type of video that's gonna do well right now. Because that's the thing, you say she made 200,000 views on a Doom post and she doesn't even play. The thing is, most of the people that watch that video probably also don't play. There's a lot of people that want to be vindicated in thinking that the game is bad, whether they're current or former players, and so that type of message at a time like right now is going to resonate more. It's kind of the popular thing to say, which doesn't mean it's not true. There's obviously like a lot of concerns with the direction the game is going right now. It's just, yeah, like it doesn't surprise me that a video like that would do really well, because I think Zepla's video is also like 150K, wasn't it? Like, talking about how bad the story was, like having the algorithm on your side will do the 200,000 views. Only if it's something people care about, though. It doesn't matter how good your algorithm is. People won't click on a video that they don't care about. So it's either they're willing to hear the way that this person is going to talk about the subject, or they're interested in the subject matter. Anyway, let's wrap this thing up. We've been on the forums for a long time. One last topic. Dynamis is a failure. Can the worlds on this DC be feasibly reshuffled to other DCs? This one's rough, guys. It's tough out there on Dynamis. Let's see. Let's get to the cold facts. Dynamis was a misguided failure. There isn't a large enough population to sustain the DC. Mostly for Aether/Crystal for dailies, raids, and more. Just look at Kraken's housing wards, which are 95% empty. It's a total dead zone. I don't know how DCs work, so forgive me my ignorance, but it seems like the only way the worlds on Dynamis survive is to fold them into Aether, Primal, and Crystal, split them up, and shuffle them into each DC. So we have 3 Northern American DCs again, with more worlds. Is this even feasible? Can these worlds be moved and rearranged? I just don't see the situation getting better here. I'm on Seraph, which has the largest population, and Roulette is a nightmare. I've waited 30 to 45 minutes for a single duty, so I simply don't do dailies anymore. Came here for housing, but feel stuck in purgatory. Yoshi P has to be aware that no one feels enticed to come here. Something has got to give. Yeah, look, Dynamis is in bad shape. Like, this is like pretty much everything said here is true. Dynamis is really, really rough right now, and to play the game, you basically have to leave Dynamis, which means the few people that don't leave also have to leave because there's no one to play with, and so you got your house and you're not happy. Well, the thing is, like, people wanted to play the game and enjoy it and also have a house, but like, if you're in a world with nobody on it, then just having a house, a social feature, you don't really get to use it much. But yeah, Dynamis got added late Endwalker, and then they added more worlds post Dawntrail. I think they were anticipating a much greater amount of players. Dawntrail had a really big peak population, allegedly the most logins at one time ever, which is a combination between Steam logins, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. So allegedly most logins simultaneously ever was at Dawntrail launch, which was only made possible because we had more servers than ever and also just better infrastructure compared to previous launches. And so yeah, Dynamis was a symptom of over-preparing for Dawntrail to make the launch smooth, because Endwalker's launch problems were famously bad. Endwalker got so bad on launch with people being unable to log in that they stopped selling the game. You couldn't even buy the game during Endwalker launch because too many people were trying to play it at once, and so they were suffering from success to a degree never before or after seen. And so like, it's clear that with Dawntrail they did everything they could to try and avoid that. However, they also with Dawntrail managed to avoid that problem by scaring everybody away. And so so yeah, like, they made Dynamis, they added 8 new worlds on North America for people to play in, they added materia, they added a lot of new worlds all across the world, and now the player population is sinking back towards Stormblood numbers when there were far fewer servers. And so it's, yeah, for some of these newer servers, there's just nobody online. It's a ghost town. It sucks there. It feels like there's no one to play with, and you have to DC travel in order to play with anyone. Not a great situation. I don't think it's time to give up on Dynamis yet, though. It's too soon to destroy an entire DC. If it stays dead until like 8.0, then it'll be time to probably look at combining it somehow. But there's also the cope that will one day get cross DCPF, and if we ever get that, it will solve most of this problem. Like, if we're able to queue up and play with people from different data centers without having to travel first, that will solve a lot of this problem, and then it won't matter anymore. But we don't know if/when that's coming, but Yoshi P has basically said that if we do get it, it won't be soon. So, here's hoping. I don't think there's any scenario where they destroy Dynamis unless 8.0 is a massive flop. But yeah, it's rough on Dynamis right now. You basically have to DC travel to play content. But basically, this goes hand in hand with everything else right now, which is hopefully the game starts trending in a positive direction again. Hopefully the new content is good and enticing, and the story improves, and people are willing to come back and also attract more new players, and then it won't be a problem. Or we can sunder Dynamis and throw it into the wood chipper and pretend it never happened. All I know is it's time for the percolator. What?